Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm going to be sharing with you another update for my Pan Those Eyeshadows project pan. This is a project pan that I absolutely love and adore and I have been doing for so long. It is definitely a core video series here on my channel and I am so excited yet again to share another update for this project with you. I'm actually rolling 2 eyeshadows out of my color palette, which is super exciting. I'm currently focusing on 4 eyeshadows and my overarching goal with all of these is to either hit pan on them, or if it's an eyeshadow that I'm not feeling compelled by, an eyeshadow that, I just don't really feel like I'll be able to do so with, I have to use them a minimum of 15 times before I can roll them out of this project, and that has worked incredibly well for me because you can familiarize yourself with an eyeshadow, get to know the formula, the color, and you can really know at that point if it's something that makes sense to try to work actively to hit pan on. Some eyeshadows, because my collection is very old, I'm able to hit pan on them within those 15 uses anyways, but Anyways, I am rambling already. I am so excited to share with you all the progress that I've made on my focus eyeshadows, but I do actually want to kick it off by talking about my bonus pan because it is from an eyeshadow that I had rolled out in my last update of this project because I had used it with my minimum number of 15 uses. It comes from my Catrice Basic Bay palette, and I knew I would be able to actually hit pan on it outside of the project, so I elected to roll it out so that I could kind of bring some new fresh shades into my color palette last update, and I'm really happy that I did decide to do that. But I was able to hit pan on the shade TBT. I just wanted to update you on that. I think I've used this maybe 6 or 7 times since rolling out of the project pan, but I was able to hit the metal pan right in the center, and I did so actually yesterday, so I'm really happy to have done that and to see this palette looking even more loved than previously. I think I hit pan on 4 of these shades this year alone, if not 3. But either way, this Catrice Basic Bay palette has been getting used so heavily by me this year and loved on. It is not one that's available and hasn't been for quite some time, but it is a good neutral palette in my collection that I reach for very consistently. Anyways, let's get on into the updates of the 4 focus shadows that I have had since my last update. And you know what? I'm going to talk about the shade that I had actually hand selected. Now, 3 of my focus shadows are generally from randomization. Then there is one that I typically pull from my own choosing because I feel like it kind of fits the color palette, or it's an eyeshadow that I want to prioritize. And so a couple months back, I had selected my Nabla Soul Blooming palette for my hand selected shade, and I decided to choose the shade called Climbing Rose. And previous to today's update, I had only used it 6 times. I've now reached for an additional 4 times, so bringing me to a total of 10 uses in this eyeshadow, and I actually was able to hit pan on it after those 4 uses. I was very surprised by this, but this eyeshadow palette is getting older in my collection. I've had this since 2018, so yes, it is quite old, but I have noticed a change in the performance. These metallics are not as impactful, and I will also note that I did finish up my glitter glue in this past month, and I have not yet replaced it, so that creates more need for me to build up the eyeshadows to the impact that I personally want. And here is a swatch of Climbing Rose. As you can see, it definitely does have great pigmentation, but just given the way that I do use my eyeshadows, and once they do go onto my lid, which obviously reacts a little bit differently than the back of my hand does, it has different properties and folds and all that kind of stuff, I ended up using this significantly less than I think I had anticipated it would require me to hit pan, but I do feel like there's a lot of variables involved, and I am really happy to see that I do have that pan right in the middle of the eyeshadow. It just feels really good to see, again, more pans in this palette, and through reaching for this palette over this last couple months, I have really expanded the pan in the shade Chamomile, and I think I might be able to finish that this year because I've made really great progress on it. And that feels good because none of my eyeshadow palettes have like entire pans used from them. And that's something that I want to change moving forward because I just think it really goes to show how much you love an eyeshadow to not just hit pan on it, but to actually use it up. So yeah, I will be rolling this out of the project, and I have decided actually that I'm not going to do a hand selected shade. Even though I did actually reach my goal on this one, I just want to randomize the new additions to this project pan instead, because that's just kind of how I'm feeling. I'm ready to work with entirely randomized shades to re-inspire me and to kind of bring this project into a different sort of scenario, a different situation. I'm looking forward to it. Anyways, let's move along into the next focus shadow. I have had this eyeshadow in the project for 2 months, and it comes from my Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette. This is a tried and true absolute favorite palette of mine. In fact, I've had this for just as long as the Soul Blooming, because these were both eyeshadow palettes that were gifted to me from my friend Alexi, who is the creator of this project pan actually. And so I've had these both for forever. And the shade that I've been working on from the Melt Cosmetics palette is called Lorelei. This eyeshadow I had used 5 times previous to today's update, and I've now reached for an additional only 6 times, which I almost feel like that tracked number is incorrect, because I did use this as my focus shade for a 5-day challenge over on my Instagram, which means that I used it 5 times, and I'm pretty sure I've reached for this more than just 1 time outside of that focus, but I could be incorrect. So we're just gonna go with the number as it is, but I would not expect that within those 11 uses I'd be able to hit pan on the shade Lorelei. However, I do have a really great dip that I'm super happy to see is forming in here. I really think that this is something that's going to take me an awfully long time to be able to hit pan on, because it's hyper pigmented. This shadow is also really hard pressed, which means that there isn't a lot of kick up or kind of disturbance that happens in the pan as you swirl your brush in it. And really, this is the kind of shade that through using it in my 5-day challenge, I came to realize that I prefer to just use this in the crease, which means I don't need to use a ton. I'm not packing it onto the lid or anything like that. So it is a shade that's gonna take me an awfully long time to hit pan on, but I'm okay with that. I think it's such a beautiful, warm, yellowy, orange kind of matte shade that just works with a lot of different types of looks and creates this really grungy vibe for just about everything. And I absolutely adore that reaching for this particular shade is encouraging me to use my Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette more often anyways. So yes, I'll continue to work on this in the project pan, and I'm looking forward to the day when I do hit pan on it, because I'm going to use this until I hit pan, I think, this year. We'll see if I change my opinion on that, but so far I really want to just try to hit pan and yeah, just use it as much as possible over the course of this year. My third focus shadow comes from my Juvia's Place The Magic Mini palette. I've had this palette in the project for 2 months now, and previous to today's update, I had used my focus shade, which is called Umoja. I had used it 6 times in this project pan, and I've now reached for an additional 5 times, so there also are 11 uses on this shade as well. And here is what Umoja is looking like today. I don't think you can tell from there, but I have actually hit pan on it. I think you can see there's a tiny little bit of pan right in the very center of the eyeshadow, and I'm really happy to see that. When it comes to this particular pan and the way that I used this eyeshadow, I typically used it on a smaller brush because I was applying it to the inner corner or right on the inner portion of my lower lash line. And then sometimes I actually used it as the inner portion of a winged liner kind of look. I really like doing that, especially with something like a silver that brings a lot of light to the eyes. So that's why I was able to hit pan on it in so few uses, and why it kind of looks like I dug right down into the pan. But either way, I will be rolling this out of the project because I did manage to hit pan on it. I think it's just a really pretty kind of satin silver. It does have really high impact, and I think it's just a really pretty shade to pair with so many looks, but I am happy that I'm going to be rolling it out of the project and hopefully working on something that feels a little bit more seasonal to me. This silver shade does feel a little bit wintry. It's just not really the kind of shade that I am naturally drawn to at this time of year. I do like things that are a little bit more vibrant and colorful. And then I also really love warm neutrals at this time of year. So yes, happy to be rolling it out. And yeah, that means that I have one additional shade to share with you. And it isn't a shade that I did roll in my last update of the project to replace that shade #TBT. And that fourth focus shadow comes from my Zeesea Alice in Wonderland palette. This is such a cute palette that truly just gets completely neglected by me, but I'm happy that this got randomized into the project to bring it a little bit more to the forefront for me. The shade that I'm working on is the first shade in this palette, and it is actually what I'm wearing on this inner part of my lid, and it's just a beautiful metallic blue. It has some like flaky texture to it, and it's really, really unique. I do also have a glitter on top of this just as a reference point, but yeah, it's such a pretty shade. I've only used it 5 times since rolling it into the project, so I definitely need to amp up my usage, but either way, I am really happy to be focusing on this. And this is what that shade is looking like after just those 5 uses. It's really hard to kind of show this one because it is so metallic and it's awkwardly placed, but I'm just focusing on the blue portion of this pan. I do have a little bit of a dip because this is kind of a creamy, more malleable sort of texture. But I don't believe I'm anywhere near pan, even though, as you can see, I've not hit pan on any of the shades in this palette, so I'm not really sure how deep they go. But so far, I have been really enjoying integrating this into looks. I think it's just a fun pop of color, and it's definitely the kind of shade that I am naturally gravitating towards at this time of year. I really love playing with blues, that like ocean and like beautiful summer skies, and I don't know, I'm just really inspired by it, and I love the way that this looks with these more like peachy and coral tones. I just think it looks so fresh and so vibrant. So yeah, really happy to be working on this and reaching for it, and I expect in the coming months I will be able to hit pan on it, but I really don't know how long it's going to take me. And I realized I forgot to give you a swatch, so let's do that right now. Here is this gorgeous shade from Zeesea. It is a little bit more sheer and it does have a lot of texture, and I can definitely like build it up and create a little bit more of an opaque look with it. But I really love how it's kind of sparse and iridescent almost kind of in its texture, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe it, but anyways, I think it's such a beautiful shade. So that means that I'm gonna be keeping these 2 shades in the project pan, the Melt Cosmetics Lorelei and the Zeesea first shade in that palette. And I'm curious to see what will end up getting pulled into this project to replace these other 2 shades. This palette could really, really go any way with these 2 kind of as the starting point. But as I said, I'm going to actually randomize the 2 new additions. I'm not going to be doing a hand-selected shade anymore, at least for the time being. And I'm really excited to see what ends up getting randomized to complement these shades. So as always, I have all of my eligible eyeshadows in my Tiny Decisions app. I have recently updated this and I have increased the number of eyeshadows in my collection actually. I have brought 2 new palettes into my collection, which I'll just share with you really briefly. The first one is the ColourPop Lost in Wonderland palette. And this is truly just something that caught my eye because it is Alice in Wonderland. I did receive this in PR from ColourPop, which I'm very, very grateful for. It's something that I haven't actually used too much because sometimes I look at this palette and I don't really know where to begin and I don't really know what eyeshadows to pair together. So it's something that I haven't really delved into that much. So if I was to pull it into this project, it would be a great opportunity for me to get to know it a little bit better. And then I've also brought in the Sigma and Angela Bright. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous collaboration palette. I did receive this also in PR and I have played with every single one of these shades already. I've only had it for a week or just over a week now. And I've used every single shade. I am wearing it on the outer portion of my lid and in my crease today. It's such a beautiful palette. I'm so, so happy to have this in my collection. And if I was to pull one of these shades into this project, I would just love reaching for this. Alrighty, so it's the moment of truth. On the screen, you'll see me randomizing my new shadow right now, and it comes from the ColourPop Lost in Wonderland palette. That is so, so bizarre, but it comes from my brand new palette that I just said would be fun to bring into the project to play with. I'm not really sure which shade is called That Way, but I'll share it with you in just a moment. And then my other focus shadow I'm randomizing as well right now. Oh, it comes from my Natasha Denona Metropolis palette, and it is the shade called Penny, which I'm pretty sure is a copper kind of shade. So yeah, I'm so, so excited. I'm gonna go grab both those palettes and share with you my new additions to my color story. Okay, so from the Lost in Wonderland palette, as I said, I don't know which shade it is, but it's called That Way. So let's figure that out together. The shade That Way is this kind of like slightly taupey, cool toned brown matte. It's like a mid-tone brown. So I feel like that'll go with so many things. I have not even swatched this shade, so let's swatch it together for the very first time. So it feels really nice and soft. I do really like ColourPop mattes. They generally are very hard to hit pan on because they typically are quite deep, but I don't know with these square pans what the scenario will be. But that is a very cool toned and very light, very light brown. So that actually might work like through my brows potentially. Actually, it looks a little too cool for that, but I'll give it a try. And it would be a really good just like crease or blending kind of shade. So that's something that I'm going to be able to use very often, especially with other cool toned shades. I really have no idea how long it's going to take to hit pan on because, as I said, I'm not familiar with this pan shape and I have not used it at all. So this could be in the project for quite some time, but I am looking forward to using it and using this palette as a whole. And then the other shade that was randomized for me comes from my Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. It is really like feeling like a tongue twister to say those words together today, but I've said this so many times, so I don't know why that's the case. But anyways, this is a palette that I love on so much, and I'm really excited to be bringing it into this project again. The shade is called Penny, which I'm pretty sure I know what that looks like. Exactly as I had said, it's kind of this like coppery sort of shade. It is a beautiful, warm, bronzy, coppery metallic. I have used this a handful of times, and this is a very textured and kind of loose sort of texture, if that makes sense. It's not like pressed incredibly hard. Like, it definitely will take a lot for me to actually hit pan on it, but as you can see, it's kind of like flaky on my finger. It's not super uniform, but I think it's going to be something that's really beautiful to integrate, especially into looks with that shade at the top there, Lorelei. I think those are going to pair incredibly, but as you can see, it's a little bit more sheer actually when I end up applying it on the hand, and maybe reaching for this palette will drive me to actually want to replace my glitter glue. I'm currently on a no buy, and I do have the opportunity to replace categories when I've brought that down to 0 and I don't have any glitter glues, and it can oftentimes be something that is pretty critical in creating makeup looks. So this might end up kind of being a driving factor why I decide to bring one into my life again to replace the one that I've used up. But we'll see. But this is actually a really cute little color palette. I don't necessarily think that I can wear all 4 of these together, but I definitely can create really beautiful little duos between the cool tones and the warmer tones here. So that will be really fun to play around with. I'm really looking forward to integrating these shadows into so many looks. I'm really happy that I have 2 Alice in Wonderland palettes to focus on. It'll just make me happy when I look into my drawer to see both of them there together, because I love Alice in Wonderland so much. So that is just a little bit of joy that I'm looking forward to for sure as part of my getting ready routine in the morning. But I really do think that these are just really great kind of core shadows for me to work with. I do have a little bit of fun with that blue and a little bit of texture variety. But overall, I think these are great shades for me to be focusing on, and I cannot wait to see how long it will take for me to hit pan on any of them. I truly believe I will be working on all of these for quite some time in this project pan. I don't believe I'll have any rollouts in my next update unless I do decide to kind of focus on some of these to hit my 15 use threshold, but quite honestly, these might be in the project for quite some time. So yeah, that, my friends, is everything. Please let me know how you're doing on this project pan. If you're working on Pan Those Eyeshadows, I would love to hear how you're doing with this project. And of course, let me know which eyeshadows you think that I should focus on, or eyeshadow rather, that you think that I should focus on for a 5-day challenge over on my Instagram if you're interested. So yeah, I think it probably should be that blue just because it's the most fun shade and it can really pair with so many different things. But let me know your thoughts. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.